So now we're going to look at income inequality, and again, I'm going to use this concept of an income distribution as a way to illustrate it. So as a very basic level, inequality really is the gap between those who have the most and those who have the least. Inequality is usually discussed with reference to income or wealth, wealth being the assets that a person has, not just earnings that they would have from work. Although you could think about inequality on a number of different dimensions. So let's return to our graph. If we think about these two lines as now representing two different countries, for example, one country has an income that ranges from one household having $0 all the way up to one household or more that have $100. While in the other country, again, if we use the data from the previous example, income ranges from about $15 up to $150. So even though income is higher overall in the second country, there's only slightly more inequality. So the richest person in that second country has $135 more than the person with $15, whereas in the first country, the richest person has $100 more than the person with $0. So in the second country, there's slightly more inequality, but not to a significant degree. From a visual standpoint, if you want to think about what income inequality looks like in a place that has higher levels of inequality versus a place that has lower levels of inequality, you can think about the shape of the income distribution. So if you look at the curved black line, there's a lot less divergence between the lowest and the highest income. Well, the graph with the blue line shows a pretty wide spread of income. So sort of the tighter the range, the less inequality is. The wider the range, the more inequality there is. So this graph is a very crude drawing of what the income distribution in the United States looked like. So the data themselves are real. They are reported by the U.S. Census Bureau. The graph might not be quite to scale, but the main takeaway here is it shows a pretty skewed income distribution. So there's a lot of people with incomes at the lower end, a lot clustered around the median income, and then there's a very long tail off at the end. And this represents the relatively few people who have a lot more income. The graph also gives it an additional way of thinking about income inequality. Oftentimes you might hear the phrase, people who are in the top 10% or people who are in the top 1%. So if we think again about inequality as lining everybody up in the order of the amount of money that they have, we can also figure out which person and their income represents the 10th percentile of income, the 50th percentile, the 90th, and so forth along the entire income distribution. So again, let's simplify this. Think of a country that has 100 people, and if we lined up all these people, let's say that each one has one more dollar than the person before them. So the first person has $1, the next $2, the next person $3, and so on, all the way up to the last person who has $100. If we wanted to know which person and the income that they had represented the top 10%, we'd need to figure out what the 90th percentile of the income distribution was, right? So, 100% would be the top, 90% of that would be the last 10%. Again, 90% of $100 is $90. So the people who have $90 and more are the people in the top 10% of the income distribution in this country of 100 people. In 2014, using the data from this graph, the people in the top 10% in the United States made $157,500 or more, while people in the bottom 10% made $12,300 or less. So this gives us, again, some idea of what the disparities are in real dollars when we think about income inequality.